They called these mountains God's wall. Said he built them high to keep what lived inside from ever spilling out. Not bears, not wolves, something worse, families. Names you weren't supposed to speak out loud. Names that emptied whole valleys when they moved in. Blood-bound clans that made their own laws, kept their own justice, and held grudges for generations. Some ruled with fear, some with violence, some with a kind of superstition that could make a grown man sleep with the lamp burning. These were the outlaw dynasties of Appalachia, 10 of them, whose very existence could challenge the way you think about law, order, and history in this country. Their stories were buried, along with a lot of the people who crossed them. But tonight, we're digging them up. The Hatfields. Everyone's heard of them. Not everyone knows the truth. The Hatfields weren't just a family, they were a force of nature. Led by the imposing Devil Ants, Hatfield, they ruled their territory in West Virginia like kings without crowns. Logging operations. Moonshine stills. A network of kin and allies ready to put a rifle in the shoulder at a moment's notice. Between 1863 and 1891, their bloody war against the McCoys claimed dozens of lives and turned the Tug Fork region into a battlefield. The stories say it started over a stolen pig. The reality? The pig was just the spark. The feud burned because these men were built for war, and because once blood was spilled, the earth itself seemed to demand more. One New Year's night in 1888, the Hatfields surrounded a McCoy cabin, set it ablaze, waited in the shadows. As the family ran screaming from the flames, the Hatfields opened fire. There were other nights like that, ambushes on mountain paths, raids on homesteads where even the livestock was shot out of spite. Devil Ants himself was said to ride at the front, his silhouette lit by firelight, hat brim low over eyes that never blinked in a fight. Locals still tell of one ambush where the Hatfields didn't fire a shot. They just left the McCoy men tied to trees overnight in a freezing rain, letting the mountains finish the job. The violence grew so fierce, governors had to call in militia. Newspapers turned the feud into a national spectacle. Even now, Hatfield descendants talk about the inherited anger that seemed to run in their blood, as if rage was something you could pass down like land. The McCoys. If the Hatfields were a hammer, the McCoys were an anvil, and the two spent nearly 3 decades slamming into each other. Led by the stubborn and volatile Randolph Randall McCoy, the McCoys matched their enemies shot for shot. Their feud with the Hatfields was fueled by a dangerous mix: a stolen pig, a doomed romance between Rosanna McCoy and Johns Hatfield, and a pride so deep it would rather bury its sons than see them dishonored. Kidnappings, ambushes, public executions. The McCoys suffered their worst night during the same New Year's massacre, 5 dead in a single attack. Randolph's wife, Sarah, was beaten with a rifle butt so badly she never fully recovered. In the days after, McCoy survivors combed the blackened ruins for anything worth keeping. One boy found a charred Bible, with half the pages burned away. They kept it, a reminder that even God's word could be scarred by hate. And then there was the night they tried to take revenge, waiting in ambush on a wooded ridge. The Hatfields never came, but a band of traveling peddlers did. Mistaking them for their enemies, the McCoys opened fire. No Hatfields fell that night, but 3 innocent men never made it home. The most chilling act? The execution of 3 McCoy brothers tied to pawpaw trees, while the Hatfields kept firing into their lifeless bodies and shouting, "One more for the McCoys!" The Melungeons. Some families were feared for what they did. The Melungeons were feared for what people thought they were: Isolated in the mountains of Tennessee and Virginia, they carried a mystery in their blood. Olive skin, gray or blue eyes, high cheekbones. Were they descendants of Portuguese sailors, lost colonists, a mix of Native American and Turkish blood? Nobody knew. And in a place where anything different was dangerous, that mystery was a weapon used against them. Neighbors whispered about blood magic and mountain witchcraft. Some swore they'd resort to cannibalism during hard winters. Travelers told stories of seeing strange fires in the hills, lights that would vanish the moment they were approached. One tale told of a preacher who vanished after visiting a Melungeon settlement to drive out the devil. Months later, his walking stick was found leaning against a tree on the ridge. Their settlements, like Newman's Ridge, became places where outsiders simply vanished. The Melungeons spoke in their own dialect, kept their own laws, and married only among themselves for generations. Truth, legend, or a mix of both. We may never know. But the fear they inspired still hangs like fog over those ridges. The shepherds. The shepherds didn't argue, they didn't negotiate. They solved problems with bullets. For over 60 years, they ruled parts of eastern Kentucky, first with moonshine stills, later with marijuana fields hidden deep in the mountains. Their land was a fortress. Booby traps on every trail, tripwires strung across paths, attack dogs chained to rusted-out car bodies, snarling at anything that moved. In 1927, 3 revenue agents went in to investigate. They never came out. When the state police arrived weeks later, all they found were 3 badges nailed to a tree. There was another time in the 40s when a county deputy went missing. Folks knew where to look, but nobody went. His badge turned up months later, nailed to a barn door like a hunting trophy. And once, during a snowstorm, a traveling salesman stumbled into shepherd territory. By spring thaw, only his boots were ever found, neatly placed at the edge of a frozen creek. Federal marshals refused to enter shepherd territory without at least half a dozen men. Local law simply looked the other way. In Floyd County, people had a saying, "When a shepherd feels wronged, someone ends up in the ground." The Bakers. The Bakers didn't just rule with fear, they ruled with belief. Led by the magnetic but unhinged Cletus Baker, they ran a criminal empire wrapped in the skin of a religious cult. Extortion, moonshining, kidnapping, dozens taken, including the daughter of a judge, never seen again. They held trials for enemies in an underground chamber beneath their mountain compound. The air there was said to be thick with candle smoke and the smell of blood. On the walls, crude carvings of eyes and spirals stared down at prisoners. Locals said their spies were everywhere. Store clerks, mail carriers, even a deputy sheriff. Nothing moved in 3 counties without the Bakers knowing. When federal agents finally raided the compound in 1937, they found symbols carved into the walls, human bones turned into ceremonial objects, and journals written in a code that's never been cracked. Some pages were soaked in what might have been blood. Folks who saw it swore the sound alone could make your teeth ache. Some things maybe aren't meant to be read or remembered. The Whiteheads. The Whiteheads were wolves in human skin. They hunted travelers on mountain passes with a precision born of generations in the wild. In 1883, they felled trees across a narrow trail, stopping a merchant caravan cold. From the cliffs above, they sent boulders crashing down, and then picked off the survivors with a rifle fire. They could live for months in caves without setting foot in town. But what people feared most wasn't their violence. It was their messages. A wedding ring left on a porch, a pocket watch returned to a widow, a child's toy hung from a fence post. silent reminders of what they'd taken and what they could take again. One woman claimed she woke to find her missing husband's coat draped over her front gate, still warm from his body. Historians say they may have been behind 60 unsolved murders. Nature finished what the law couldn't, a brutal winter in 1908 that killed the last of the main bloodline. Or so they say. The Collinses. The Collins family didn't need outsiders for bloodshed. They had each other. What started as a logging fortune split the clan in two. Brothers against brothers, fathers against sons. Two fortified compounds less than 2 miles apart. Watchtowers, rifle pits. For 11 years, they waged private war, poisoning livestock, sabotaging homes, ambushing hunters. Sometimes the night lit up with muzzle flashes from one hill to the other. The gunfire could last until dawn, echoing through the valley like thunder that wouldn't stop. The worst came in 1904 at a Sunday church service when both factions met by chance. 15 dead in minutes, 3 of them children. The sheriff refused to investigate. Collins killing Collins, he wrote, is God's way of solving the Collins problem. One story says that during the height of the feud, a Collins boy of no more than 12 crossed the wrong ridge and was never seen again, except for the rifle strap his uncle later found nailed to a pine. The Greenfields. Isaiah Greenfield ruled his West Virginia valley like a feudal lord. A Civil War sharpshooter with a mind like a steel trap, he built a surveillance network so tight it looked like magic to the locals. Signal fires, hidden lookouts, runners in the night. Those who defied him disappeared. And their belongings, a boot, a scarf, would appear scattered around the community like a curse. In 1918, a flood exposed a network of tunnels beneath the Greenfield compound with cells carved into the stone. In one, chains still hung from the wall. In another, scratch marks covered the rock, the last desperate act of someone left to die. Some who ventured into the tunnels after the flood swore they heard whispers, as if the stone itself had learned the voices of the people who'd suffered there. When Isaiah died in 1921, his grip broke. But the valley stayed empty for decades. People didn't just forget. They avoided remembering. The Rains family. The Rains didn't just believe in their religion. They built it with blood. Their leader, Elijah Rains, called himself a prophet, said the end of the world was coming and only his followers would survive. They raided nearby communities for food, supplies, and sometimes for converts. In 1915, an escaped teenager led police to a clearing. There, they found a man tied to a wooden altar, sacrificed, his chest carved with strange symbols. Witnesses spoke of moonlit bloodletting rituals, of chanting that went on until the first rooster crowed. During the Depression, more desperate souls joined. Between 1932 and 1942, at least 24 were never seen again. And then there was the story of a woman who escaped and swore she'd been kept in a locked room for preparation, though she never said what that meant. When police raided the compound in 1947, most of the family had already melted into the mountains. Some say they never stopped. The Johnsons of Blood Creek. The Johnsons thought bigger than most. From their stronghold in eastern Kentucky, they ran a criminal empire from 1910 to 1957, stretching from the mountains to Chicago. 3 brothers, Raymond, Curtis, and Ellis, controlled bootlegging, gambling, protection rackets, and later gun running. They had informants in police stations across 5 states, blackmailed judges, even a congressman. Their enemies were left with the Johnson mark, mutilations so distinctive they became a signature. The brothers escaped the raid, but were hunted down and killed within the year. Some say the last to die, Ellis, went out laughing, telling his captors, "You can't kill a Johnson. We just passed the blood to someone else." Some say these stories are history. Others say history never really ends, because in these mountains the law is only as strong as the men who carry it. And blood remembers.